New revelations have emerged about Prince Andrew's secret legal deal with Virginia Giuffre. According to her upcoming memoir, Nobody's Girl, Giuffre says that she agreed to a one-year gag order to stop her case from overshadowing Queen Elizabeth II's Platinum Jubilee. The book claims that Andrew insisted on the silence clause as part of their settlement in 2022. And tonight, GBNews can bring you even more exclusive revelations with the only British journalist to have access to the memoir before it's released next week, the Telegraph's chief US correspondent, Rob Crilly. Rob, we made all the headlines in the UK today. Thank you for doing that. Maybe we can do the same again now. So what's the revelations?
Right, so look, let's go back to November 2019. You remember that's the date of Prince Andrew's disastrous Newsnight interview with Emily Maitlis. He appears not to regret his friendship with Epstein, and he comes across as rather cold and arrogant, right? But listen to this. This is Virginia Giuffre's own words. As devastating as this interview was for Prince Andrew, for my legal team, it was like an injection of jet fuel. Its contents would not only help us build an ironclad case against the Prince, but also open the door to potentially subpoenaing his ex-wife, Sarah Ferguson, and their daughters, Princess Beatrice and Eugenie. So you remember his defence was he'd taken his daughter Beatrice out for pizza on the date he was supposed to be with Virginia Giuffre. So he has opened up the whole of his family to potentially being questioned, to be deposed, subpoenaed in this case. Now, that's November 2019. Virginia Giuffre then files her case against Prince Andrew. You remember he wouldn't accept it. He hid behind the walls of his home on Windsor. Said his legal team said the papers hadn't been properly served, all of this. Anyway, we get now to February of 2022. We're getting towards the Queen's Platinum Jubilee celebrations. And she writes, after he'd stonewalled us for months, the scheduling of his deposition, which was to take place on March the 10th, seemed to motivate him. So we're getting forward to the time where he's got to sit down with opposing lawyers. He'll be on camera in the American courthouse way, and he will be filmed as he answers all these awkward questions. Was he at a Pizza Express? What about his medical records? Does he really have a condition that means he can't sweat? Remember how crucial that was to his defence. So February 2022, the Platinum Jubilee, the celebrations have already rather begun. It all culminates in June, a couple of months later, but they've already begun. Anyway, a settlement is made. It is made public a few days later. It's made public, I have the date here, February the 15th. The settlement is announced. They issue a joint statement, Giuffre and Prince Andrew, saying that he will pay some money. It's undisclosed at that time. And it also goes on to say that he understands that women have suffered at the hands of Jeffrey Epstein. Now, here's the crucial bit. She writes, I agreed to a one-year gag order which seemed important to the Prince because it ensured that his mother's Platinum Jubilee would not be tarnished any more than it already had been.
Which begs the question, did the Queen know about all of this, and did she deem it to be so serious that she needed Virginia Giuffre to say nothing for a year? Because that is very damaging for the royal family.
Can you imagine if this case had proceeded and you got different members of the Duke of York's family, as he was then, he's been stripped of that title of course, trooping in to legal offices, each being asked these terrible questions? There would have been a succession, there would have been headline after headline after headline, all at the time we're supposed to be celebrating her extraordinary reign. I think there's a couple of points I would add. We know that Prince Andrew was very reluctant to settle. He wanted to fight this, and he'd ignored advisors a lot of the time to even do that BBC Newsnight interview. But for once, he seems to have actually done the sensible thing. And the other thing is, we learned later, the Telegraph reported, the payout was £12 million to her, $2 million to her charity. A big chunk of it was paid by the Queen. So she was stepping in to bail out, and all the reporting was that that was her favourite son, remember? So, you know, can you imagine in her final years having to bail out her son like that? So
the late Queen paid that settlement in order to not cause a distraction with the Jubilee.
I mean, I don't want to get beyond what's written here.
Yeah.
We know that she paid the money. Now, whether she was buying the silence, I think that might be a step too far. But she certainly wanted to get this finished and over with. And I think that once again you have a narrative of a victim being silenced, essentially.
And it's awful because it's difficult to read into it in any other way. We're living in a time of what feels like pretty significant social change, and it makes us question things that we've even taken for granted for decades. And one of those at the moment that people are wondering about is actually money. Is the money in your bank account safe? Should you be investing elsewhere? Are we looking at a potential global crash? What will it mean for your savings? Is there a way that you could be using your money that might be outside of government control even? Well, TallyMoney is potentially one solution. So I'm delighted to say that I'm joined today by the CEO and founder of TallyMoney, Cameron Parry. What is TallyMoney?
Well, at TallyMoney, you basically get gold you can spend. So we give people an individual account in their name, everyday account. They get a sort code, an account number. They use that account just like they would pounds from their bank, but it's milligrams of gold that we brand as Tally.
Okay. Why would you do that, though? What is the benefit to the customer instead of just having a normal pound sterling account?
Gold's performance against the pound is above 11% per annum over the last 25 years on average. But we still need money in our daily lives, and we have savings. We know that it's good common sense and prudent to save up for things, not just live in credit. You know, whether it's a holiday or a rainy day, your retirement planning, you need to have money in your life, basically, that you can rely on, that's dependable, that nobody meddles with, that nobody can weaponise against you, which is another element of government control when it's the government currency, which we could talk about another time. And it should be pretty simple and straightforward, and that's what we deliver at Tally. And really, we just want people to feel safe and happy with their money. There was a time when the bigger your bank balance, the more confident you felt. Now it's like, I need to do something with it. I can't leave it there. In Tally, you can.
Okay, brilliant. Cameron Parry from TallyMoney, thank you so much.
Thank you, Bev.
I've often thought it's hard to know with the royal household how they handle the bad PR. Or how aware are they? How bothered are they, for want of a better word? Because often they don't comment on anything, do they? That is the royal way. So in the absence of commenting on this, the actions, I think, are very powerful. The actions of paying her, be silent, go away, we're not going to let those girls have their day in court, we're not going to let Andrew be held accountable for this. That trail has to come back to the royal household and to the Queen herself.
Yeah.
Will it damage the reputation of the Queen? As I'm saying it, I can't believe how damning that is to a woman that I thought was the best royal we've seen.
Yeah, I mean, I won't make the leap from the payment to the silence in her case. I think Andrew, I mean, the other story that's out today, the Mail on Sunday's scoop, is that he actually passed on Virginia Giuffre's date of birth, some other information, the social security number, to his police bodyguard, essentially asking him in 2011 to dig up some dirt on her. The Mail on Sunday has got hold of incriminating emails to that effect. And that, I think, speaks very poorly, I mean, about Prince Andrew. And look, he's denied all the allegations against him.
Of course.
But
12 million quid is quite hard to explain away if you are entirely without blame in some way.
And if you are busy trying to dig up dirt on your accuser, that's not a good look.
Is Charles mentioned in the book much, Rob?
No. And I've got to say, I mean, a lot of this book is about her life. She had a miserable childhood, treated appallingly, and ends up as the sort of vulnerable woman that came into Ghislaine Maxwell and Jeffrey Epstein's orbit. There's not much mention of the rest of the royal family other than Andrew. She does also mention another episode where they got wind that somebody in Andrew's team was trying to get an online troll to go after Virginia Giuffre to try and undermine. You remember the famous picture that came out of the prince with his arm around her?
Yeah.
They wanted to find somebody who might have evidence or be able to prove that the picture was manipulated. And they found an online troll who had been criticising Giuffre. they said, do you have anything? And also wondered if she could set up a second account just for the
This
trolling.
is this famous picture. Now, of course, if it was today, you could say, well, it's AI, but we didn't have AI in those days, and I don't think the authenticity of that picture can be called into question particularly, can it? I mean, the picture itself isn't necessary, it's not a crime, but obviously that is the picture which has come back to haunt him.
She describes the moment of taking that picture and how she kept some, remember the old disposable cameras we used to have? She had a bunch of those, and she thought she was, well, meeting royalty. I would be amiss to not to get a picture. My family would love to hear about this. And then after what happens with him on that night, she basically the next day races to get them developed and gets several copies of them.
Any other powerful figures, Rob, in the book who might be a little nervous?
Plenty of figures. I mean, well, first of all, I'll deal with Donald Trump. He's in there, but actually comes out pretty well, treats her nicely, actually throws Epstein out of his club, Mar-a-Lago, as we know. There are people who are not named, and there is a former prime minister who is particularly brutal in his treatment of her, and I should be very clear, there are no other identifying details. Please don't start listing British prime ministers you can think of. I know there are online some names floating around.
But she doesn't mention who it is?
She doesn't say anything about who it is, so I presume they are still alive and therefore will likely to be litigious. There are a number of high-profile scientists. Some are mentioned, some are not, because you remember Epstein was funding the work of a lot of high-profile scientists. They are in there. There is a story about Ghislaine Maxwell and George Clooney that she used to boast about. The story has been out there before. It's not exclusive to this, but how she serviced him in a cupboard in some way.
Ghislaine Maxwell did.
Ghislaine Maxwell. There are all sorts of names that crop up. Some of them just in passing, and she'll mention actually that person was very, very pleasant. Matt Groening, the creator of The Simpsons, is in there, and she talks about being encouraged to massage his feet, and that's as far as it goes. So Bill Clinton, of course, is in there. The famous trip to Africa that they made with Kevin Spacey on board. No suggestion of any impropriety. So it's an extraordinary galaxy of figures, and some of the worst offenders, shall we say, aren't named.
But when I've no doubt the lawyers have been through this with a fine-tooth comb, and sometimes I think these kind of books get a little castrated in that process, which is unfortunate.
Right.
But as a reader, are you left to draw some conclusions about how could anybody of sane mind been amongst that crowd in the room with the massage beds? It is not normal to have your friends round to a house and there to be a young girl who massages your feet. I think people will be implicated, I imagine, just because it would. How do you explain away that you couldn't see it?
Yeah, there are young girls everywhere, and there is art. Look, some of the most famous paintings in the world are nude images, right? But the sorts of descriptions of pictures that Epstein had go beyond what we might see in a museum or a gallery. Also, he had a cupboard that was filled with photographs of naked young women. It's one of the birthday presents she describes in here for Epstein. Ghislaine Maxwell gets her undressed and takes pictures of her. So I don't understand how you could exist in that world and not have questions. But what I will say is, if you are a rich and powerful man and you wear a nice suit and you have a $200 haircut, you can get away with a lot of stuff.
It's surprising how many people will turn a blind eye in the presence of such wealth and power. And that's before we even talk about the potential blackmail plots of people who were filmed inside the house. So what about, just briefly then at the end, Rob, will this reflect badly on the Queen, this explanation of the non-disclosure agreement, this silencing, this gagging order? We don't have confirmation that the Queen, she got 14 million quid, 2 million to a charity and 12 million pounds to herself, some of which came from the Queen.
I mean dollars. I mean, look, I think the way, but still a huge amount. Look, I guess the way I would put it is, it's a mother bailing out her son in his darkest hour. I mean, you know, it's not nice, and I don't want to say that she was responsible for silencing Virginia Giuffre. This was Prince Andrew and his lawyers and their crisis management strategy after, frankly, they screwed it up for years and years and years, because as he's discovering, you can't shut this away.
Will this book change the British people's view of the royal family?
I think Andrew's reputation is toast anyway, so I think it's baked into the reputation. I think we've seen decisive action from the King, presumably led by Prince William. They've done the right thing. Too late.
Yeah.
But they've done the right thing.
Well, too late. That is the conclusion, isn't it? Rob, thank you so much. Rob Crilly from the Daily Telegraph. Now, of course, we must remind you that Prince Andrew has previously denied any wrongdoing whatsoever.